Well, in our last two videos, we looked at the Majestic Theater. Now we want to get into our Google Mobile, and we want to slip around the corner on Huron Avenue and see the Family Theater, or at least where it was at one time. And as we enlarge here, this building right here, this used to be the Family Theater. Actually, it wasn't the theater itself, though. This was the entrance to the theater, and in the back, where the actual theater was, that's no longer there today. If we go over to Superior Street and look at the back of where the entrance would have been, this area right in here, all this would have all been the theater. Now it's a courtyard. So the theater itself is gone, but the entrance is still there. You might get a little better idea looking down from the satellite view. The section here that you see in yellow is the Family Theater entrance, and of course where the concession stand was and the ticket office. And then behind there, where you see the courtyard today, that's where the theater was. We looked at the Family Theater early in our series, I think video number 3, and very thankful that we have personal photographs, otherwise we wouldn't even know what the Family Theater looked like. This first photo is looking north toward the theater, and this second photo is looking south. When I'm researching a theater, I always like to see if there was another theater before that theater was there. And when I went back to look at the Sanborn fire maps, 1911, I saw this. And from this you can see that the Family Theater was originally a small theater, much like the Arcade Theater was. The whole theater took up what would later be just the lobby. And you can see where the auditorium was going to be later on was a wagon shop at that time. The Electric Theater kind of threw me for a little bit because I thought perhaps that was a theater before the Family, but that's not the case. The Family Theater was there at that time. I think the distinction is to distinguish electric from gas, which would have been an important distinction for a Sanborn fire map. I found this in the Times Herald, dated 1911, the same year that the Sanborn map we were just looking at was. And here you can see the Family Theater. So it was there at that time. Matter of fact, it was there in 1910 because that's when it opened. In this article, dated September 3rd, 1910, it says, Family Theater now open to public. Crowds gather at the new playhouse and success seems almost certain. And it goes on to tell a little bit about it. The thing I found interesting, it gives the size, which pretty much backs up what we saw on the map. The Family Theater is 97 feet long, will seat 300 people. And it goes on to tell the stage is 12 feet by 11 feet. It's a very, very small stage. Only a year later, the Family Theater changed hands. And it goes on to tell about who the people were and so forth, but it says this afternoon and evening, every lady attending the theater will be presented with a handsome china souvenir. And then you get an idea of what's playing back there in 1911. It says here that there was going to be a ventriloquist, a comedian, a novelty act, good singing and dancing, and then also several excellent motion pictures. Of course, back then, motion pictures were very short. In 1916, the theater that most of us remember started to take shape. It was no longer going to be a small theater. It was going to be a large theater. New structure will seat 1,000 people. Work begins Monday. The property in the rear of the present theater has been purchased from M.N. Buckeridge, and the building will be remodeled into a fireproof theater structure capable of seating 1,000 people. The present theater will be used as a lobby to the new theater and will be handsomely decorated and lighted. The original theater didn't have a canopy either that went out over the sidewalk that most of us remember in the family theater. We know that because of this little blurb here that was in the paper. Ask for a canopy permit. The manager of the family theater has filed a petition with the city commission asking permission to erect an ornamental canopy over the entrance to the theater. In this photograph here, you can see the canopy quite clearly, and it looks like it was supported by two large chains. And in between the chains, where the signage was at one time, that was a window. And the perimeter of this building, you can't see it too clearly here, but it was stone. And you'll get a better look at it in a second. In this photograph here, you can see in the background what was the family theater, but before that, there's a building here, and it gives you an idea of what it looked like before they put the family facade in the front of it. But you can see the stone quite clearly in this photograph. And as you scroll up here, you can also see where the window was, and that's where they eventually filled in and put the signage for the family theater. And I believe that's the same stone that we see today on this building. I originally covered the family theater in video number 3, and in that video I showed a very short video clip of going past the family theater. And these are a couple of screenshots from that video, but you can see the stone and everything else was covered with a large yellow tile. There's a lot to look at in this photograph, and I looked at it all in video number 3, so you might want to go back there and check some of these things out, like the Union Hotel and the bus station and so forth. But what I want to look at is the family theater and the signage that you see on it. Cool. Of course, the signage was the fact that they had air conditioning. But in order to get air conditioning, they actually had to sink a well in the back of the theater. And I know that from this article here. The well was sunk just off of Superior Street, which today would be about here. However, I don't see the well anymore, do you? The most memorable movie I ever saw at the family theater was Gone with the Wind. It sticks with me for 3 reasons. First, it was the first movie I ever saw that had an intermission. 2, it was the longest movie I ever saw. And 3, I didn't know when the movie was over. Back then, we just walked into the theater. We didn't pay any attention about time schedules. We just walked in, and whatever we missed, we got around the next time. And so when intermission came, I had missed a little bit of the first part, so I thought, well, I'll wait and catch the first part again. And then, of course, there's another half a movie I saw. I couldn't believe it. Wait till the movie rewound and got the first part again where I missed. Quite the adventure. There was a lot of mushy stuff on it, but there was some good stuff that boys liked as well. Family theater lasted until 1965 when it was purchased by George Ennis, which was a men's clothing store. It was purchased in March of 1965 with the agreement that the family theater could keep running until October of 1965, and then the store would move over their belongings from the other store at the other end of the block that went in well into 1966. The old George Ennis store that was opened in 1936 was a couple doors down from Sperry's, in between Diana Sweets and J.C. Penney Company. Mr. Ennis opened this store when he was only 28 years old, and you can see from this little article here that there was a correction made because they thought he was 38 years old, saying that he is believed to be the youngest store proprietor on Huron Avenue or Military Street. I found this ad that was put out by his store in 1936. I thought it was quite unique. All about ties. Ties with dots, ties without dots, spotted ties, ties without spots, red ties, blue ties, ties plain, ties fancy, ties for dress, bow ties, ties that cost a fortune, ties that don't cost a fortune, Stripe ties, figure ties, and inspirational ties. In fact, we have everything but railroad ties. Thousands of ties at 55 cents, two for $1. And in this ad, talking about their move, they're saying that they'll be only 100 feet from their present store. And here's a picture of the staff. Maybe you might know some of them. I know I went to school with Dennis Messenger, and I think he was the tailor. And here's a little later picture of the staff. This store was like 1,000% improvement over the little small store that they used to have. The frontage had a very unique front. It had almost like an awning that went out there, but it wasn't made of fabric, it was made of steel. And in this photograph here, you can kind of see it at an angle a little better how far it came out. Probably about as far as the original canopy as the family theater had. Well, the family theater went through a big change, going from a theater to a clothing store. Everything was going to be new. But one of the things that wasn't new was the bathrooms. When the family theater occupied this site, I'm told it was a meeting place for teenagers. And that's what it says in this newspaper article. I was never in the bathroom myself. My mama told me, you don't go in public bathrooms, you never know what you're going to catch. And so I never did. Maybe I missed out. But then again, maybe I didn't. The Art Deco bathrooms were in the basement of the theater. At the bottom of the stairs was a lounge. Gold, green, white, beige, and black ceramic tiles adorned the walls. A ceramic tile bench and hand-laid ceramic tile flooring complemented the decor. Connie Strout, the daughter of George Innes, says, I can remember how all the girls would rush down to the bathroom to put on their lipstick, then rush out to the bench and jockey for position and wait for the boys. And the boys were just as bad. They would rush out and wait for the girls. Pink and green ceramic tile walls set the tone in the women's room. The tiles in the men's room are powder blue and yellow. Marble walls and mahogany doors enclose the stalls. Marble shelves line the walls. Both restrooms have the original plumbing fixtures and mirrors. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a color photograph of this to see all the amazing colors? Well, thanks to TJ Gaffney, we do. And here it is. George Ennis only sold the very best of clothing for men. And when you opened the coat up, you could see the George Ennis label. In 1976, the store owner, George Ennis, passed away. And in 1978, his daughter Connie purchased the business and assumed ownership. In 1985, George Ennis was elected Retailer of the Year by Bowden Clothier, the largest wholesaler of men's clothing in the country. But all good things come to an end, and in 1992 it did. George Ennis ends era as shop closes. Fond memories remain of a real class operation. His daughter Connie said it was an agonizing decision to close the business, one that took her 18 months to make. The business had been in bankruptcy proceedings for more than a year. What happened to me is what happened to the corner grocery store, she said. George Ennis was simply overpowered by chain stores, especially those at Lakeside Mall in Sterling Heights. The downfall began in the mid-1980s. Companies such as Levi Strauss and Arrow were catering to the big retail chains, ignoring smaller stores such as George Ennis. We would order clothing from Levi Strauss and Arrow and not get anything. And George Ennis, a wonderful clothing store, came to an end. Well, there's a couple other things I'd like to cover in this block before we get to the next theater, but we'll get them in the next video, so join me then.